How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Great to chat with you today.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. You as well.
How are things?
Just fine, man. Just fine. Doing a lot of press for the album, which is cool. And it's all good. All good, baby.
It's a good album.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that a ton, man.
Yeah, it's that's what we're going to talk about. When you approach an album like this, I mean, some people kind of mellow out with age. You don't appear to be mellowing out at all. How do you how do you keep your edge?
Oh man, how do I keep my edge? Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever been asked that question. I had to think about that for a while. Yeah, but the record is kind of quite aggressive.
Yeah,
It's definitely not yeah, like you say, sometimes bands get older, it gets a little more folk, they get a little more
right.
acoustic, but it definitely has a lot of power. But I think that probably some of that's to do with the emotion of the lyrics and the intensity of the message. It needs some aggressive music.
Right, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's a natural stage of life where people start out pretty hard rocking, they have kids, it's
Sure.
just people you hang out with and stuff. It's just but your record is just like out of the gate, fresh, youthful energy, zeal. Your lyrics, are pretty aggressive and pretty uh you know, straightforward, which
Mm.
I appreciate. And so, yeah, you want to talk a little bit about any of the songs? I'm looking through my notes here, just making sure. Well, like, Destroyer, it's time for war,
Mm.
uh, that we are in a culture war. Is that what you're talking about in there?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a lot of references on the record to being in a battle or war, the struggle, the fight. Now, to be fair, I think a lot of Skillet records have had that type of stuff. I mean, that's an ongoing, always relevant message for the Christian, of course, because
Right.
we're always in battle, a battle against the flesh, battle against sin, yada yada. But I do think that it seems to be more noticeable on this album, and I think I mean, it's intentional, but I think it's because of the times we're living in. I mean, it's just a very, very volatile, hostile time, and so I like to write my songs hopefully with a wide net. It can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And if you want that to just be about the war, meaning the battle against the flesh, well, that's okay because that is absolutely true. But I am talking about not just that. There is a war against, in my view, a war against ideologies. I mean, and sometimes we call that culture war, but I believe that there's a war against ideologies that are setting themselves up against the lordship of Christ. I think that's even in the church happening. I think that that's a battle that's happening amongst just in Christianity in general, and it certainly is a clash of ideologies happening in the culture as well. And I think that, certainly everybody would notice that. I would assume there are certain things that we've all taken for granted. Maybe
Hmm.
a lot, maybe we all for most of our lives. And now all of a sudden, some of those liberties, they're on the chopping block for the first time. I never in a million years would have ever imagined the government telling us you may not go to church. You may not go to church and worship God because of anything. Fill in the blank with whatever you want. That would not happen in America, and yet it did. And I think that we're only at the beginning of seeing what some of these things are going to look like. So all those themes certainly went into the heart behind the songs.
And if you do go to church, you can't sing. You're
Yeah,
absolutely, or yeah, yeah. So,
yeah.
it was certainly shaped by the thing that we're in right now. Your podcast is still going pretty strong, right?
Yeah, yeah, I still do the podcast once a week, and trying to do the best that I can. It's hard to keep up with everything, but I hope what I really hope to do in just my own way is just to encourage people to live for Jesus, encourage people to put the Word of God first. Word of God is home base, but Word of God is the foundation. That is everything, and all of our political views, all of our obviously religious views, but how politics and religion have to do with each other, the role of the government, the role of the family, the role of the father and the mother, all of those things have to be built on that foundation of the Word of God. So what I hope to do with the podcast is encourage people in a slightly not academic fashion about what these things mean, what's happening in culture, and how do we fight back. And I give my opinion the best I can, but with the goal of um, people loving the Bible, realizing the importance and the supremacy of the Word of God.
Did you, with this album Dominion, did you approach it differently at all when you were thinking of it? I'm sure, like you say, it was influenced through the pandemic and the shutdown. So, was there anything else unique about it as you were putting it together?
Let's see. I mean, there's a lot of different things probably about it on the music side and on the recording side and on the lyrics. I think that there was a real feeling that these songs were just kind of coming out of us. It wasn't something that we weren't going to like sit down and we have to write a record now and what do you want to sing about. It was more like, oh, these songs are coming out, we have so much we want to say. I think that it was the urgency of the that that feeling that also made the music kind of quite aggressive. The music is kind of in your face. And that was an exciting thing. I think it's a really exciting record to listen to. But also, we worked with a producer, two guys, one Kevin Churko and Kane Churko. They're related, and we've done stuff with them in the past. And I'm a huge fan of the Churkos. Amazing producers. And this time we said, hey, let's write a couple songs together and record them and see how it went. And it went really good. And so having that relationship was kind of cool. They typically do really heavy records. The records they've done in the mainstream world are like, Five Finger Death Punch, Disturbed, Papa Roach, they're metal albums. And so that brought a nice heaviness to
Right.
us, yeah, that I really enjoy. The drums are like really in your face, and so I think that it's quite an exciting record to listen to.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about the record?
Well, let's see here. Again, I think the aggressiveness of the message is probably notable. We didn't really pull any punches, and I think that I kind of been calling this album, it's a positive rebellion. That's what I've been saying. It's a very rebellious record, very anti-establishment. And and I think that's because we have found ourselves in this time in America where if you are a Christian or even if you just have traditional values, maybe you're not even religious, maybe you just have sort of traditional values of American thought or Americanism, whatever you want to call it, you are in the minority and you are being kind of shut up. I mean, you are being silenced in a way that we haven't been. And
Right.
so all of a sudden we're kind of like on the defense. And what I think is really interesting, I don't know if you I'm sure you've noticed, I don't know if people listening have noticed this or not, but here's what's really weird. We are being backed into a corner. And as soon as we kind of fight back or we push back, then we are called divisive. We're called, why are you being so mean? Why are you being
Right.
so divisive? You're causing a stir. Why are you rocking the boat? And I'm like, no, no, no. I've always believed this. I've always
Right.
said this. You're the ones that are getting kind of radical, and you have gone so extreme that you have created a culture in a marketplace, a public sphere, where me believing and saying what I have always believed and said is no longer acceptable. That's the kind of cancel culture moment that we are in. And then
Right.
when I say something, then I get blasted for being mean or divisive. And some of this record is a pushback against that. It's like, hey, you know what? This is part of the battle that we're in now. You know, you don't own this sphere. You don't own the public sphere. You don't own academia. You don't own the arts. You don't own culture. Ultimately, Christ is Lord over all of those things. You don't own it. Christ owns it. So there needs to be a pushback
Right.
from Christianity. That is my belief.
Excellent. Excellent, John. I'm behind you 1,000%. And I'm just glad you're out there fighting the battle on the front lines, and leading the charge. So I just encourage you and affirm you in doing that. It's a very much needed voice in the culture wars. So yeah, I'm looking forward to everybody hearing this album. I love the cover, love the music. It's great. It's going to get us, uh, keep us young, right?
I hope so. I hope
Yeah,
so. Yeah,
yeah,
the cover is kind of cool, you know, if people haven't seen it, go check it out. It's called Dominion, but the cover is basically we did it at the Salt Flats, and it just looks like a huge desert, you know, like
wasteland. Yeah,
yeah, a vast wasteland. There's nothing around, and you know, we built this really cool throne. It looks like a throne made of stone, and kind of the idea was
yeah,
supposed to look ancient, and there's this kid sitting on it with a crown on his head, which I thought was kind of funny, kind of ironic. That's the irony of this is that sometimes the Christian life. So like we know that the victory has already been won, right? We hear that in Christianity, like Christ has won the victory. That is obviously true. But at the same time, we have to fight every single day. Every day that we're alive, we
right.
are in a spiritual battle and we have to fight. And the idea of the album cover was, you know, that little child, that there's a teenage boy on the throne on the cover. He's supposed to be representative of all of us as individuals. In other words, he's there, he's ruling in his little sphere of rule, if you will, which is supposed to be symbolic of the fact that we all have to rule, right? I rule my I rule my body, I rule my mind, I have authority over my children, our sphere, all under the lordship of Christ. And so this teenage boy on this throne, he's the ruler of his area, but it's not necessarily a pretty area. It's like a vast nothingness, you know? And I think that that's sometimes what life is like. You're in the battle. It's not always as glorious as you want it to be. It's going to be really, really difficult, but you are doing your part to rule and subdue, you know, as the
Right.
culture mandate tells us. So that is supposed to be the imagery of the album cover.
That's great. Well, it's been great talking to you today. I know you probably have a full day. They probably loaded you down with interviews, but I really,
We got to get the word out, so I don't mind.
yeah, yeah. And I appreciate you. And I remember, we're comic book nerds, both of us. So we always talk comic books.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So appreciate you, John.
Thank you. It's great to chat with you. Thanks everybody for watching.
Thank you.